Okay, so let's watch this debate between the two of them, and let's see if Heem can put big power fascist in this place on this particular subject. Let's go, and let's speed it up first.
Welcome to the
Me too, Spice
Crucible.
Ball.
Tonight, our regularly scheduled debate was to be between BNC and Heem on immigration. Unfortunately, BNC canceled, so it falls to your humble host, who's more than happy to take Heem on. I've requested that Stardust come in as Pedro, my partner, is traveling. She's going to be moderating. Let me bring her out first. Stardust, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much on such short notice for coming in and moderating this debate. I sure do appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Heem, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? I'm
Good,
good. How
man.
are you?
Good. So let me explain the rules for the debate, then we'll pass it over to the moderator. Both of us need to adhere to what the moderator says. Rules for the debate, you have a 5 to 7 minute open. You don't need to take the whole thing. Obviously, you can yield your time back. Debate lasts about an hour. In an hour's time, the moderator will tell us to wrap up with closing statements. Then the moderator can open the floor. So the moderator can then ask her own questions that she chooses, and we'll read off questions from the crowd. Stardust, where can everybody find you?
I am on Twitch, twitch.tv/Stardust.
And Heem, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on YouTube or on Twitch at twitch.tv/Heem.
Awesome. The topic for tonight is immigration. Stardust, I will turn it over to you as the moderator.
Okay. Which one of you wants to go first in opening statement?
Well, I invited him. I'll go ahead and open if you'd prefer that, Heem.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So my position on this is that essentially progressives are liars when it comes to immigration. First and foremost, progressives often say that they're against illegal immigration. They're so against illegal immigration, in fact, that what they want to do is go ahead and make all the illegal immigrants legal immigrants. That's how against illegal immigration they are. This is nonsensical on its face. This is akin to saying that we can get rid of murder by simply making it legal, right? That's true. The crime of murder would then go away.
Then what you have to do is you have to create some kind of normative claim, some normative position about what constitutes borders, what constitutes who should be able to go where. So we have some standard for illegality, right? Like, you can't take the position, well, it's illegal because it is. That's a descriptive claim, not a normative claim. Like, we want to make sense, is immigration beneficial? Whether it's illegal or not is nonsensical. The reason why murder is bad is because it is, you're ending somebody's life. It's not bad because it's illegal. You're not making that proper argument there. So right off the bat, he's making an idiot of himself. I know, it's also pretty disanalogous as well, like living somewhere rather than killing somebody. Like, you have to actually make, a claim about the material impact of what happens to see if it's bad or not, right?
Still persist. That's a huge issue on illegal immigration, and oftentimes progressives try to skirt on the immigration front by saying, I'm against illegal immigration too, let's just talk about legal immigration. I think it's nonsense because their policy for legal immigration is terrible. The second, on legal immigration, we need to talk about social cohesion. We need to discuss how many immigrants we can allow into the nation at one time in order to allow them to integrate. We should base this on skills, and we should also be looking at the domestic birth rate crisis that's going on in the United States and elsewhere in the world in order to solve this problem. With that, I'll yield my time to Heem.
Okay. So I guess I'll take over. So yeah, I'm basically I'm excited to have this convo tonight. I'm here to advocate for immigration. I'm an immigrant myself, so of course I have a soft spot for immigrants, but I can also advocate for immigration based on empiricism as well as morality as well. So I just I guess to kick things off. You said that illegal immigration or that progressives are liars because they say they're against illegal immigration, but they say they want to just make them legals. I think there's two different things, right? I can say I'm against illegal immigration of like saying, listen, I don't want it to such that.
Well, I'm assuming Andrew's going to make the claim that to fix the birth rate issue, we shouldn't be looking to immigration. We should be trying to encourage more births. And I think, well, either's fine, right? Like, the only argument you can have specifically for that is by trying to make some kind of claim that immigration in general is bad because it is, and then make the claim that, well, since I have now proved that immigration is a net negative rather than net positive, we have to look towards other methods to, increasing the population other than immigration, right? So that I'm assuming that's the crux of his arguments, essentially.
People are able to just come into the country without any sort of checks and balances. So one part of it is like, how do you prevent illegal immigration, which I think is what progressives talk about when they say they're against illegal immigration. The other side is, what do you do once those illegal immigrants have arrived? I think that like there is something to be said that once they've arrived and they've got a job, they're set up, their kids are going to school, so on and so forth, that the best thing you can do at this point isn't to deport them. It's actually to create a pathway to citizenship and legitimacy for them. And then furthermore, you mentioned social cohesion. I guess I'm curious what social cohesion you're referring to. I feel like there's a lot, all over. In all societies, there's there's some cohesion and some lack of cohesion between people, whether they're white, black, or immigrants or whatever. Like I see a ton of white on white lack of cohesion in the United States. So I guess I'm curious where this land exists that has so much social cohesion. And yeah, I guess we can start off there.
So in order to respond to all of these things, let's start with social cohesion. I'm not a racialist. I've never been a racialist, and I'm never going to be a racialist. However, I am a cultural nationalist. I do believe that there has to be some type of cultural glue that holds a society together. In the United States, this was done for the better part of 200 years, utilizing the Constitution, but that is now failing with the mass number of people that we have here. It's become more of a divisive document than it has a document that has brought people together. So when you say there's plenty of white people who have conflict, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Whoa, 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 whoa. There's always been conflict over things that are constitutional, right? You know, I don't know. How about this? How about the Civil War? How about this? That whole thing that happened about every man equal under God, right? You know that bit. Was that not a fight over something constitutional or not? Come on, you're better than this.
I just want to expound on what I believe social cohesion means.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah.
Which means that there's some type of glue that holds society together culturally. It has nothing to do with their skin color, race, creed, or anything else. Many cultures have lived together and it's been fine. The Byzantine Empire is one such example. There's many such examples. That aside, recall that the very first thing that you said was, hey, guess what? Illegal immigration, what do you want to do? You want to make them all legal.
Well, no, I want to say, so I said,
solve. Hang on, I'll yield it back, I promise.
Okay,
but this
sure.
is always the solve for a progressive. A progressive always wants to solve this problem by burying their head in the sand and just make.
I mean, that depends on the specific immigration policies in Florida, right? It doesn't have to specifically come down to, your specific area. That may only be some kind of confirmation bias from what you've seen based on policies in that area. Whereas, what I really like is a policy they do in Denmark where they specifically settle new immigrants in areas with low immigrant population because it disincentivizes forming enclaves. It acclimatizes the native population to the immigrant population as well. So people get integrated more easily than if they were just immigrants come in and live anywhere, right? Which I think that's a good policy. I think letting immigrants come in and form enclaves does lead to social discohesion. I don't think the answer to that is banning immigration. I think it's having more kind of streamlined immigration policies and settling policies about what we do when immigrations come into a country, both from the global south into the global north and vice versa as well. I think there's always ways in which we can sort these out without having to resort to just banning all the immigrants, right?
Making all of the illegal immigrants that are here legal. That's terrible policy. We've done it before, and it didn't do anything to curb illegal immigration. It's an immoral policy because they skip people's spots in line. It's also immoral because then preferential treatment is given to their family members when they're made legal by skipping their spot in line. This is terrible, terrifically horrific policy that should not be adhered to on the illegal immigration front.
Okay, so I guess to respond, I never said that was the only thing, right? Like, I want to make sure that like this borders are strong and that people, but I'm just saying that once they've arrived, I don't see what the other suggestion is, just to keep them as illegals, I guess, and have
you throw them out of the country just like you would do with somebody who did any criminal activity.
Well, no. It's problematic because that policy doesn't exist. It's not problematic because it's immigration specifically. Plus, there's only one area of the immigration debate. This is specifically a debate around the kind of social cohesion argument, which doesn't stem to the economic benefits, nor the kind of cultural benefits as well, which I would argue are just as important, if not more so. Right. So if you can solve one of those three issues whilst also maintaining the benefits of the other two, then that is an argument why we should be continuing to do immigration. Like, I can be happy to say that immigration policies thus far have not been perfect, but that doesn't mean we just scrap the whole thing completely. Like, if you have a flat tire, you don't just bin the car, you get a new tire, right?
You would adhere to what the law says. This is a democratic nation. Our politicians have been voted into office democratically. The law is the rule of the land. The rule of the land says if you're here illegally, you need to go back home.
Okay. And what about if they've had kids and stuff and set up roots? You don't care about that?
Those are called anchor babies. And whilst you can say that anybody who is born in the United States who's had a baby, that their mother is allowed to stay and take care of the baby till the baby's 18, you can't give me a reason why the mom then needs to be naturalized or have citizenship past that point.
So you're saying that if a mother, I'm just trying to restate what you said. So you're saying that if a mother came here legally, had that baby, you're saying you'd be okay with them to have that baby or stay here until 18, right?
I would not be okay with that. However, I would be willing to at least make the compromise with understanding that if the current policy is that babies who are born in the United States are United States citizens, and that is the policy of the land, that at the very least you would allow the mother to stay for the first 18 years of life.
But also, I don't get this argument from Andrew either here, where he's just saying, well, it's democratic and that's what the law of the land says. I'm like, well, good, that's an argument that you can make for acting upon a democratic mandate, right? But that's not the same as making the normative claim that this democratic mandate is a good thing that has good material benefits or is worse materially, right? That's not the same argument that he's making.
But there's no reason not to deport her after that point.
Okay, so my question is, like, do you think that after 18 years, if a mother has raised
if anything, Denmark is more racist than the United States. Like, it's more racist against Asian populations than the United States is.
child and has committed no crimes, has done nothing, that they haven't earned the right to stay still, even after
I think that they
18
would have
years?
earned to the right had they filed for citizenship, and 18 years is an awful long time to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is they should have a path to be able to do that.
There is a pathway for them to do that right now without ever coming across the border and having the anchor baby to begin with.
But if they're here, though, then there's no path?
Yeah, but they shouldn't be here to begin with. So if you had staunch border policy, if you were to mobilize the border guard, National Guard especially, in order to make sure that illegal immigrants were sent back to their origin nations, like the law determines that they're supposed to be, we wouldn't have the issue of anchor babies to begin with. However, you might find that some slip through, and if they do and have a child here, current policy, unfortunately, is that they have United States citizenship. I would prefer that they did not, but that is current policy.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, but could you see that there's, like, so one thing you brought up is that whatever they've done hasn't been able to curb illegal immigration. You said something like that, right?
No. Democrats have gone out of their way to make sure that the border remains as open as possible. They've not prosecuted such elements as the border angels, people like this who aid and abet people crossing illegally. They've done everything possible to make sure that border security is as limited as it possibly can be.
And also in America, like the issue with, illegal immigrants, the vast majority of them are just people who've outstayed visas. They're not people crossing the southern border the vast majority of the time. Like, it's difficult to be able to get through. You either have to go through the individual checkpoints, you have to trek across fucking desert, or or something analogous to a desert to be able to get to any kind of settlement, to then be able to either seek seek immigrant status, or or to claim asylum, right? So again, I think it's a lot of scaremongering about south of the border, when the issue really is how we deal with the visa process. If you are going to make a claim that we need to be able to deport illegal immigrants, then you should have a better system with which you check up on visas, rather than spending huge amounts of money patrolling a border for what I would say is very little financial gain.
Wide open border.
Sorry, but as far as I understand, border security isn't actually the issue here, right? It's mostly people that overstay their visas.
When we're talking about illegal immigration, that's true. So I guess one of the policies should be then that we don't issue visas without tracking people, right?
Okay, I don't think that happens anyways. Like, oh, you mean like tracking them? Like, where exactly are you gonna? But they already do that. Like, when I come to the United States, they ask me where you're gonna stay, what's your address, what is a contact, da da da. But like, but that's still the number one way.
Yeah, primarily people who are here on overstayed visas, unlike immigrants who are coming from down south, aren't using stolen social security numbers and ripping off our taxpayer dollars to the tune of billions per year, getting all types of federal income taxes in exchange.
What is stolen?
They shouldn't qualify for them to begin with. They've stolen somebody's identity.
What do you mean by? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand. What do you mean by stolen social security? Like, how does someone do that?
How do you think an illegal immigrant gets a job?
They mostly get jobs under the table, I assume.
If it's not under the table, how do you think they get a job?
My understanding was that the illegal immigrants work under the table.
No, illegal immigrants have jobs.
Or they can work for, like places where you have to put like as minimum amount of details as you need to.
So if you were to guess, how would you guess if an illegal immigrant got a job and they were run through check system? How would you suspect they would be able to get that job legally?
I don't think that they can. I'd have to see like an example of. I'd have to see like an example or something.
Yes, illegals work at all types of different retail chains, factories, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, in Michigan, they've done several raids on large factories that have hired illegal immigrants. The factories are not penalized for doing this because guess what? The illegal immigrants are there under a stolen social security number.
So these are security. Wait, sorry, just to clarify, these are social security numbers of people that exist, or they're made up social security?
They're mostly dead people. What Coyotes, the service that a Coyote renders is not just to bring you across the border. The service a Coyote renders is to bring you across the border and also issue you with documents that you can then utilize inside the United States in order to get these various jobs. In this way, you can basically exist under the radar using somebody else's stolen identity. Those people are not always dead. Sometimes they're quite alive. They get credit cards in their names of other people. This is why identity theft is so horrific to people who it happens to, especially when it comes to illegal stealing the identities.
Okay.
And this is, again, a function of bad policy. The function of poor policy, that you don't give these people an easy path to citizenship or easy access to work visas because green cards are so fucking hard to get hold of, that they're then forced into these particular predicaments. Like, he started off on his axiomatic belief that immigration is bad, and then worked backwards to say, well, the law states this, so that makes them even worse. And it's like, these problems arise because they're immigrants. Well, no, the problem arises because the law exists. If you let them work, and you let them, at least have working visas, even if they weren't official citizens. If they just had work visas, they would still be, as long as they're working for an American, they'd still be paying taxes to the US state. They'd still be a consumer within the United States mainland, so they'd still be contributing economically. So all of the problems are solved then, right? I mean, maybe you have only certain length work visas, right? Then you run into the overstayed visa problem once that work visa ends. But I don't really think. I'm against the idea of having of not giving them path to citizenship at that point. Once you've worked here, lived there for a long enough time, then you should be able to apply for citizenship. Sure, maybe if you failed the citizenship particular citizenship criteria that they've got, then they can deport you as well, right? Again, I'm not saying that I have some kind of silver bullet solution to how on earth immigrants should be treated by the visa system, right? I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that the problem that he is highlighting here is a problem that is caused by the laws that are in place, not with the idea of immigration as it exists in totality. Again, laws are already constructed, as has already been said by Andrew, through a democratic mandate and then put through, well, democratic mandate, I guess, representatively, and then put through by the people who are in charge. So that is done, but you can still then make normative claims about whether that is good or not, and then you can bring that back to whether immigration is good or not outside of that, because these two are two different problems.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to ask you was, do you ever see a situation where it would be legitimate for someone to flee their country?
You're talking about refugees.
Yeah, like...
Yes, I think that if you live inside of a war-torn nation, that the morally righteous thing for a mostly Christian nation to do would be to accept your women, children, and young men who are fleeing.
Why not old men?
Hang on. And who are fleeing those war-torn nations. However, well, there's reasons why you don't accept older men. One of the reasons is you don't want to be intaking spies and various espionage agents into your nation. And they do slip in, and they're generally a little more seasoned, right? So generally, they look at men who are between 18 to 21 years old as, kind of the general crop that would come in from war-torn nations. Now, if you come in from a war-torn nation, I don't have a problem with that. However, I don't think that having convoys of immigrants coming up who are clearly so well-fed that I can't believe they can even walk.
How do you know how well-fed you've been?
Well, because I'm looking at the footage. Okay, I'm looking at the footage, and these people don't seem like they're starving, right? What are they fleeing?
What does starving look like? Like, just they're not skinny enough?
Starving looks like the kids in Kenya when you see the Arms of the Angel commercials.
So they literally have to be just bones before you're able to accept that, that they might not have the resources or not have a stable life?
American fat, no. I don't think that that's a necessary qualification to be American obese in order to qualify as not starving, man. So you know.
Okay.
So America has the opposite problem. Not only are they not starving, but they're not. They maybe should be starving a little bit more.
Okay.
Right?
So yeah, like I don't know. I think that like when you say progressives are lying, I think that you're kind of mischaracterizing the progressive position.
Again, what you've done there is you've taken this position where you assume that the number of jobs that are available within a certain country or a certain area, you're assuming that this is static. It is not static. It is based off demand. If you increase the population, you increase the number of consumers, which then increases demand for employment to be able to fit in those needs. And we've seen that with the studies have shown this, that it doesn't drop with regards to immigrants. They are always an economic boon to the country, right? And if anything, if you look, there's a really good Loner Box video about it. I mean, it does depend sector on sector. But if you look at, for example, manufacturing plants, it actually gets benefited by immigration because it means that there's enough cheap labor for them to not move overseas. So what ends up happening is if you get rid of immigration, all of these places go overseas. You look at Brexit as a good example of this. They move their factories overseas because they can't get the cheap labor in the UK anymore. The cheap labor from the immigrants supplements the native population who work on higher wages within the same factories, usually in management positions, etc., etc. And then they lose their jobs once immigration goes because those companies move overseas. It's really interesting. And also, it's, again, regardless of that, having a larger population creates a greater number of employment opportunities due to a higher consumer base.
So I think most progressives there are obviously some fringe people who think that there should be no borders, but I think that like most people understand that borders need to exist in order to, because nation to nation there's differences of all kinds, and you can't just, I'm not going to fucking argue for open borders. But what I'm going to
make an excuse for why we shouldn't deport people who come here legally.
Yeah,
so that's what I mean by the lie. So what it is,
but they're different. You have to see the distinction between these things.
It's a distinction to me without merit. It
really
looks like to me it looks like a classic bait and switch. I am actually against illegal immigration. I'm so against it. Let's give all illegal immigrants citizenship. That's how against it I am.
Wait, no, but they're two different things. One is I'm against it, so I want to be able to prevent it, right? And then the other there's two different questions.
By giving the current crop, how do you think it doesn't work as an incentive to give the current crop of illegal immigrants inside the United States citizenship? That's insane to me. Why would that not work as an incentive program?
Infiltrate illegally. Just so I can clarify. So obviously, the people who are coming here right now illegally, right? The incentive is already there for them because their life. Clearly, they've chosen to live illegally in America when they could have lived legally wherever they came from. So I don't think the incentive is the problem here, and that's not why would it matter? It's already incentivized that people illegally come to the U.S. That's why they do it.
So
But once
then
they're there, it's a
so-
question of
so
what
we
is the
should be
best.
offering incentives, right, for people to illegally immigrate.
The
to the US,
incentive is America's existence. That the country of America is better, even if you're living in it as an illegal, than the situation that they came from. So how are you going to change
Well,
that?
first of all, it's not always better than the situation that you came from. 1/3 of Guatemala is inside of the continental United States now. Most of them, by the way, legally, not illegally.
Okay.
The living conditions that are inside Guatemala, it's true, they're not nearly as good as that of the United States, but they were able to immigrate here in a legal fashion, pouring out literally 1/3 of the nation into this country in a legal manner. Now, they're small enough that you can absorb small amounts of populations like that, and while maintaining the social cohesion of your domestic population. But you can't be bringing in millions of illegal immigrants plus 1 million or to the tune of 1.5 million legal immigrants per year. We don't have the infrastructure even to support
America is
Yeah.
importing 1.5 million legal immigrants. That's not the number I saw.
legal immigrants per year since 1990. In 1990, the population was roughly 250 to 270 million. Right now, it's 330 million. This is mostly due to rampant immigration.
Okay.
And
So
let me give you an example
Good.
logically of how you will know that that's
Right.
true. The United States
Population
birth rate is
equals
not
good,
at
right?
replacement levels, and yet it was at 250 million people 30 years ago. Now it's at 330 million people. So if
Do
we're
you
not replicating, where are they coming from, Heem?
wait, sorry. You're talking about the population of America increasing, right?
The
Are you
population
against
of
the
America-
population of America increasing?
No, the population of America's increase is not due to the domestic population increasing via birth rates. Our
It's
birth
both.
rates are dropping like a rock. No, it's
wait,
not.
Wait, 1 sec. Sorry. So the birth rates
We
are
under
dropping
replacement levels.
now. Yes, now. But
Period.
when
We have been since post 1960.
Okay,
That's when the baby
I'd have to. I haven't seen that stat. I know
Okay,
it is
well,
now.
this
I know
what
it is now.
Let me explain it. Okay, so in the 1960s, a book came out called
Okay, here's a four. If you're an immigrant and you live in a country, right? What do you do? How do you survive? What do you do to live? Like, what are your material needs? Do you perhaps need, I don't know, a house, or food, or shelter, or entertainment, or anything else like that? And you're a consumer. Like, as population increases, the demand for consumer goods also increases, right? Once the demand for consumer goods increases, then the demand for the people with which to bring those consumer goods to market increases. And what does that create? Jobs. It's very, very simple.
the population bomb. The population bomb predicted that when the population massively increased inside the western and eastern lands, that what would happen was there would be mass starvation. The opposite, in fact, happened. And when the population boomed, we now have more of a food supply than we ever had in the existence of all of humanity due to the additional labor. The prediction was wrong, but what it did was it caused a massive panic inside the domestic United States, in South America, and in Eastern nations, and they began to rapidly decrease the population via propaganda. Every place on planet Earth, almost right now, with the exception of Africa, is under replacement levels. The
Okay.
only Western nation that's not, to my knowledge, is Israel.
Mhm.
What you would consider a Western nation.
Okay, so again, all of these would suggest that you need immigrants to replace. Like, I
Okay,
assume you
well,
don't
you
want a
have a
shrinking
big-
population.
You've got a big problem with that, though, which is that your immigrant population is also getting below replacement levels. So how are you going to continuously replace
Then listen. Then the
How are
Earth
you
the
going
Earth population will level off. Like,
Are you need to listen very closely to what I'm saying. We right now have a massive surplus of food production due to the massive increase in population from the 60s.
Do you think that that's
If
why we
you
have a
have a
surplus
massive-
of food?
Yes. if
No,
you
I think we have a
massive-
wait. Sorry, I think we have a surplus of food because people love to have.
Yes, if the market demand for goods increases, who do you think brings those goods to market? People who have jobs. Really, really simple. For example, if your shop has to instead of having to have 100 loaves of bread to feed the population of the village, they suddenly have a demand for 200 loaves of bread. It's going to take twice the number of staff to bring that to market, right? And also in general, if Andrew is so considerate of the fact that there is a material need for immigrants to move out of their host countries, whether it be for persecution, as in case of refugees, or whether it just be for better opportunities in the case of economic migrants, then what we really should be doing is looking at making sure that the imperial periphery gets reparations for the amount of economic resource extraction that has happened through colonialism for the past however many years, right? However many centuries that's gone on, and the amount to which of these areas of the world have been devastated by colonial economic policy, Western foreign policy, and things like that, to be able to get them to the place where they would need to be. For example, places like Africa, which essentially spent 100 years being used as hundreds of years rather, having resources taken away from them by European nations, things like that. And then look at the scramble for Africa, etc. That they didn't industrialize as quickly as everywhere else did because they didn't have the resources with which to do so. So if we want to be able to reduce the levels of immigration, we need to have a look at how industrialized places like the global south are, the imperial periphery, so that then that would be a way of disincentivizing people coming over. The fact that these Western nations have such high standards of living is due to economic value chains that have been established by colonial rule over time, etc., etc.
Have stocked up grocery stores with 20 different kinds of
So
cereal and
where's the
40.
fucking food coming from, Heem?
It's being
It's
what do
being
you mean?
grown by human beings,
Yeah,
right?
of course, yeah.
Of course. So
But you said that the
labor
overproduction of food is due to birth rates. I'm just saying the overproduction
is
of
due
food
to population increase.
it's due to the fact that people like to consume and they like to have options and they
No,
want the
it's due to
grocery
the
store
fact
to
that
be
there's an
stocked.
increased amount of labor so that you can have mass production of food worldwide. It's the number one export of the United States is food.
Okay, and I'm confused what the point is here, I guess.
My point is that you would need to raise the domestic population of the United States. If you do not do this and simply say, well, we'll just replace the domestic population with immigrants, what do you do when the immigrant population gets below replacement level as well? You're putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. Mexico, for instance.
What do you suggest?
I'm telling you.
Okay.
Mexico, for instance, is at 2.10. This is still below replacement rates. You need to be at 3. You got to replace yourself. You have to replace your spouse, and you have to have.
Why would 2.1 is above the replacement rate? What do you
No,
mean?
that's not replacement. It needs to be above 3 because you still have people who die young.
Okay.
So
But-
you have to compensate for that. You want to have at least 3 children per woman. This replaces the husband. This replaces the woman.
I don't think that many people are dying young. Like the mortality rate is ridiculously low now.
The infant mortality rate is
Okay.
very low, but there's still youth mortality. People still do die quite a bit under the age of 50. Okay, and what I'm telling you right now is that in order to have your population flourish, and by the way, the birth rate is still dropping. So just because you say, well, right now we can replace you and I, in another 20 years you may not be able to even do that. What happens when the United States population gets down to 0.8 and Mexico's population gets down to 1.5 in the birth rate? You can no longer sustain replacing the domestic population with immigrants. This is bad policy. Why not shift all the money that you would spend for immigrant labor and instead put that towards a domestic policy for increasing the birth rate? That makes a lot more sense.
So you think that? I guess I'm just trying to.
I mean, you could just do both, right? That's not an argument against immigration. That's an argument for increasing the birth rate, which I guess I'm amenable to.
restate your position. You're saying that let's limit immigration, even though it's going to hurt the economy and stuff now, but by refunneling it towards people to encourage them to have more children, then it'll eventually like balance out.
If you have a domestic birth rate policy, you don't need to replace your domestic population with immigrants. This creates better social cohesion, better financial stability, and it does not displace the most vulnerable workforce among the United States, which is African Americans.
Okay, but there is also something to be said. You know, the refugee thing that we mentioned before, the bringing family thing over.
Okay, so let's get into refugees. I think that we should have very specific criteria for what we consider a refugee.
I think we already do.
Okay, but we don't, because Democrats want to change the criteria of what is a refugee to people who are maybe fleeing an abusive spouse. That's not a refugee. Refugees should only meet the criteria of war-torn nations.
Wait, you're telling me that there's situations where people, women are going to flee their country because of a abusive spouse? Like they save up the money, they buy a plane ticket.
They come here legally and apply for asylum.
No, but they got to save up the money and fly here.
No, or they can just cross the border to the south.
Okay, so you're basically these would be just specific to Mexico?
Well, no, it wouldn't be specific. South America is a very large place, Heem.
So you're telling me that someone is going to get into a fight with their husband and go trek multiple different countries just because they wanted to get away from their spouse?
Because they want to illegally enter the United States for the luxurious welfare benefits that they would concur when they get here. There's no way to verify in a short term that you're actually fleeing an abusive spouse, but many have come here and applied specifically for asylum.
I'd love to see that. Because I've seen like gang violence and stuff. People leave for gang violence.
So do you think that refugee status should be based around starvation?
I think refugee status should be like based off of oh sorry, there's a little bit of an echo. Being able to oh fuck, I lost my train of thought. Being able to prove that reasonably prove that your life was in danger. I mean, I guess you could say a spouse, but I think you could probably find better ways than to deal with a spousal situation. Mostly it's like for religious persecution or sexual orientation persecution or gang violence. If your entire city is overrun by gang violence, I would say these are valid reasons to become a refugee.
So gang violence is a valid reason to be a refugee?
Yeah, like if the entire
so should people in Detroit apply for refugee status in Europe?
So what I meant is like if you're under threat.
I mean, if you want to move from Detroit to Europe, I do not give a shit.
Like dying due to a gang, and like by leaving the city, it's not simply enough. Like you've got a mark on you. Getting out of the country is the only way that you can deal with it, I would say, in those situations.
So what countries do you think that if you move away from the domestic area which has the gang violence, are you marked by that country for death?
Sorry, I'm not sure what the question is. Say that again.
What country's marking you for death for moving away from gang violence inside whatever city is gang-ridden inside that nation? That's bizarre.
I don't know. I don't really follow gangs closely enough to know the inner workings, but I know that they go to some pretty extreme...
Heem's not doing very well here, is he? He's not really combating Andrew's points particularly well, frustratingly. I love when people post "Let's go Brandon" in my chat. I'm British. I don't give a shit. And I also agree fuck Joe Biden. But I'm happy to actually say fuck Joe Biden because I'm a leftist and not like a pussy ass conservative who has to like giggle about like whilst going, oh, I'm alluding to the naughty phrase. Just say fuck Joe Biden. You can say fuck Joe Biden. I'm saying it right now. Just say it. It's true. Fuck Joe Biden. But fuck him because he's a neoliberal shell who's selling America out to corporations, and by giving them huge amounts of tax deductions, and not because you think he's bad because he's making you get the vaccine, or he's making you take the tests to be able to participate in society and not infect people. Oh no, I'm so sad. I'm so sad for you.
Pretty crazy extremes when it comes to
Well, you
dealing
would
with.
agree with me that it would probably be inappropriate that because cities like Detroit, for instance, suffer from massive gang violence, for somebody from Detroit to apply for refugee status to the European Union because of gang violence.
They
That
should
would
be
seem
able
pretty-
to. No, they should be able to. Why not?
They should be able to apply for refugee status to the European Union?
I guess why not?
Because
Or
they're-
Canada? Or Canada? Or
Do
Canada?
you think that they would accept them? Or do you think that maybe they would want more criteria?
I don't know. I'd have to see the specific situation, but I think yeah, like these are some examples of like some cities get completely ruined by gang violence. Like why wouldn't you want to offer people an out for if through things that are not in their control?
Well, what you would do is you would encourage policy that would eliminate
But-
gang
but
violence
policy- wait,
via
one sec,
three
sorry.
criteria.
Sorry,
The
I
first
have to
criteria
interrupt.
would be- Go ahead.
Policy is not going to. Policy takes time to enact. But what are you going to tell an individual person who's suffering or whose life is in danger? Wait for the Democrats to get elected and then pass, or wait for the no. Come on, people got to do what they can to stay alive. That's why I'm okay with it.
Just to back up, just to make sure that I get this correct. You think that it's appropriate for human beings inside Detroit to apply to the European Union or Canada for refugee status based on the fact that inside this local demographic, there's an overage of gang violence, rather than to increase the funding for domestic policy to both combat poverty and create a situation that leads to less gang violence? You think
Whoa. Andrew Wilson, Big Papa Fascist. We should put through public money to combat poverty. Wow. What interesting suggestion. I agree. Wow. Brilliant. What an odd thing for him to say.
Wait, why does it have to be one?
up their border and accept all the Detroit refugees?
Why can't it be both?
Well, because it's an insane policy. You
Why?
only have so much money to throw at problems. The first thing that a refugee relocation policy would cost billions of dollars. That would be far better served applied to the actual nation, which is suffering from the gang violence inside it, including our own.
The problem is like that. While I agree that probably passing policies that can reduce gang violence is obviously something I'm for. A lot of that comes down to funding these cities and whatnot. And you obviously, I assume you hate the Democrats and whatnot, but I don't see Republicans ever trying to pass any funding for public health care or public schooling or any of these things that actually will be able to reduce the gang
They've been
violence.
throwing billions of dollars at these programs for years, and they're largely ineffective. These are programs.
So what is your
that are written
suggestion
by-
then? What's your
Well, because
suggestion?
I'll give you a suggestion. But first, let me explain this crisis. First and foremost, these are programs that are written by lobbyists and signed off.
Also, they haven't been throwing billions of dollars at public schools. What they've been doing is throwing local property taxes money at local schools, which is not fixing any of the problems because all the schools in the bad areas aren't getting the funding that they need. All the billions of dollars are being spent on vanity projects and all the places in the rich areas where they don't need to have this fixed, because having property taxes pay for your local schools is a fucking insane policy that has to get stopped immediately.
On by politicians. There's billions upon billions of dollars that are involved in public education. There's billions upon billions of dollars that are involved in welfare programs via these crony lobbying groups. That's one. But two, my largest suggestion is that the origin nation be responsible for its citizenry and not us. Why would we be responsible for gang violence that happens in Nicaragua? That's not our business.
No,
It's
of
not our
course.
concern.
First of all, a lot of times it is because it's because of the drug war. Like a lot of this stuff comes back to the drug war.
I hear that a lot. But the thing is that why would that be our problem? If we had enforced borders, there wouldn't be drugs here.
Do you think that there's no drug checking and stuff at the border?
There is, but the thing is, when you have a wide open border with thousands of miles, it doesn't matter if you have drug checkpoints. They still smuggle it in.
Okay,
Like
so
crazy.
then that's exactly, yeah, I agree. It's going to be
So then
smuggled in
you
anyways.
need to lock the southern border down in a major way to stop drug trafficking coming up through that border. But what you don't do is you don't go, let's give billions of dollars to the foreign government, which is in hand with the drug dealers, and then watch it trickle down, not to the poverty that causes gang violence, but trickles down into drug dealers' hands instead via the corrupt government that you're getting billions of dollars
Sure.
to.
Or how about you decriminalize drugs and then there's no need for the gangs anymore? That's a much better policy than having to spend loads and loads of money patrolling a huge border. I guess the checkpoints of the huge border, because there's only a few points which you can actually properly cross, right? So it's difficult, but you still have to then spend a load of money policing the border anyway, regardless, rather than just decriminalizing drugs, taxing the shit out of it, and then having like an actual market for these things, rather than all be under the table, all be black market, which put power into the hands of these illegal drug cartels. Like the drug war is just a nonsensical policy. Oh, you only have to look at Portugal to know that it's better. It's better for the citizenry who get caught up in the gang warfare. It's better for the people who end up getting addicted to the drugs, and it's better overall for the public coffers as well. Like there's no reason not to decriminalize drugs unless you have some weird axiomatic idea that you cannot pass laws, or not you have to or that you have to pass laws to disincentivize things that you are morally opposed to for some kind of esoteric grounds, rather than any kind of basis in material reality, right? There's this thing that I fucking despise about conservatives, where the way in which they do laws is nothing to do with the material impact of the law. It's just about what they think they can't be seen to be morally permissive of, right? So, with examples, we can't be seen to be morally permissive of drugs or abortion. They should go to prison because it's bad. I'm like, I do not care. If you want to reduce abortions, you make it legal. If you want to make drugs less harmful, you make it decriminalized. Very, 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 very simple.
Okay,
insane.
that's why I'm saying that I would be for ending the drug war. As long as,
so
like, you
what
have
do
to.
you think?
Look, there's only two options.
You're
Okay.
in the drug war on fentanyl, man. Like, you're just gonna allow people to take as much fentanyl as they want.
Wait, what?
Yes,
Well,
100%.
I'm asking you, you're gonna
Absolutely. And then if they feel like they want to get clean, then they'll be able to go to healthcare professionals who they'll be able to see without being fear of being outed for being somebody who has done something illegal, and they'll be able to get clean, right? A lot of the people who get trapped in these drug dependency cycles do so because they have nowhere to turn, because it's illegal. The cartels that run it, or the drug dealers, even on the ground, are what rope people into harder drugs from gateway drugs in the first place, because it's once you get wrapped up in that, it's very difficult to be able to get out of that particular cycle because of the illegality.
in the drug war, fentanyl is a very lethal drug. inside the
Fentanyl is
United
one
States.
that just started in the last 5 to 10 years.
And
This,
under
this
your
problem.
policy of ending the drug war, it would be legal, and you would have tens of thousands of domestic citizens dead from this horrifically
Wrong.
dangerous drug. You would
Just
just
wrong,
end the
just
drug
wrong.
war, and that would take care
Okay.
of it. There's a lot of dangerous fucking drugs you can't just end the war on, man.
And it's just wrong. You look at Portugal, and then the results speak for themselves. Like, it's just he's not basing anything on fact. He's just, I mean, I can see where he's inferred this. It's like, well, loads of people are dying now. If we made it even easier for them to do it, more people would die moving forward. But that's just not how the data bears out in actual practice.
Okay, when I say end the war, I'm specifically referring to things like marijuana or fucking even cocaine. Like, these kind of things should be controlled and regulated. And these are the sources of the major. Fentanyl is not being produced in Mexico.
Marijuana is not a huge source of income for foreign drug dealers anymore.
And neither is fentanyl.
Legal
Wait,
inside
neither is
continental.
fentanyl.
Yes, it is. The reason that foreign drug dealers have moved over to things like fentanyl is because the general controlled substance that was marijuana is no longer profitable since it's legal inside the United States. Your good fucking intentions.
He's literally made the argument. He's literally made the argument for it, and that they've stopped doing it because they've stopped doing it with marijuana because it's illegal in so many places. He's literally making the argument for stopping the drug war and decriminalizing the drugs as part of his rebuttal to the argument to that argument in the first place. Like, I don't know what he's smoking, other than obviously the cigarettes you can see in the video right there.
Ended up creating another massive problem. This is the problem with progressive good intentions.
Well, the thing is,
Good
if you don't
legalize marijuana, now we have a fucking fentanyl problem.
wait, you think we have a fentanyl problem because of legalized marijuana?
Yes, I think that once you take away the ability
I'm
for
sorry.
profit, if you think that's funny, then
That's
let me-
hilarious.
Let me query this with a hypothetical to you.
Okay.
If you made all of your money off of selling marijuana, which was illegal in an origin nation, and then they made that marijuana legal in that origin nation, would you move over to a different drug, or would you just not make money anymore?
The question is, if someone was making money from marijuana, would
Right.
they?
So, if you make the rest of the drugs legal, what do you think would happen, Andrew?
You would just go to whatever is most profitable, of course.
Right, you would just go over to a different drug, right?
Okay, sure.
Right. So why is it laughable to say that because we've begun to legalize these less lethal drugs and profits have gone down for drug dealers from them, that they haven't moved over to different drugs like fentanyl? It would be absurd not to think so.
Well, then, wouldn't it be a good way to prevent illegal drug trafficking by legalizing it?
No, we
Of
would
course.
prevent.
Of
Wait,
course.
wait,
I live in
wait.
Canada. We just legalized marijuana
Are
in
you gonna
28.
legalize crystal meth, man?
I mean, listen, you should be able to have all this shit been kind of controlled. I don't think there's a big. First of all, I don't think there's a big market for crystal meth. Okay, like I think the average cocaine user isn't going to be trying to do crystal meth. But yeah, all of these things. should be
Well,
controlled in
clearly, Heem's not been on Grindr very recently. Although I wouldn't be surprised considering he's got a fiance.
some way,
The
so
average
that you
cocaine
don't.
user is not going to do crystal meth.
Yes,
Why do you think this?
because I think that there's a certain stigmatization with crystal meth that cocaine doesn't carry with it. That's why.
What about the stigmatization of fentanyl, knowing how lethal it is, and the fact that people are still taking it and dying all the time from it?
Okay, so the fentanyl thing is because it comes down to the opioid crisis. The opioid crisis has nothing to do with the drug war.
The fuck? Of course it does. What are you talking? You think heroin has
The
nothing to do
opioid
with the drug
crisis
war?
has to do with prescription medications.
What's heroin made out of?
Okay, I understand that prescription medications have amphetamines in them and heroin has amphetamines. But what I'm saying is a
Opium.
lot of it. Wait, you're gonna tell me that the prescription medication has nothing to do with it?
Of course, prescription medication has something to do with it.
No,
However-
it has a lot to do, more than anything.
However, it's necessary for people to take prescription medication to manage various health crises that they have. It's not necessary for fucking anybody to take lethal doses of fentanyl.
They
except
take,
they're
you know
trying to
why
get
they
fucking
take it?
high.
You know why they take it? They take it because they get addicted to the opioids, and then they can't get the opioids anymore because of like their
So you
prescription
wanna
runs
just
out,
make
or it's
everybody fucking opioids?
no.
Or
What
opioid addicts or what?
okay, so just to go back, you said that the opioid crisis, you said that the fentanyl crisis came from marijuana. I'm just showing you that has nothing to do with
What I
marijuana.
said to you specifically was that it logically follows that if you make one profitable illegal drug now legal, that drug dealers are going to move over to whatever drug now is illegal that they can make a profit on. Some of
Okay.
those drugs inside the domestic United States and in most nations should be illegal and criminal because they fucking kill people at staggering rates.
Okay.
Just experimenting with them does that. You don't want to make fentanyl legal. You don't want to make opioids legal. You don't want to go back to fucking heroin.
Opioids
bins, do ya?
are already legal.
They're controlled.
Okay, but and the reason that people are getting addicted to them is because these opioid companies, oxytocin, whatever the fuck is it, OxyContin, they knew that it was way more addictive than they publicly admitted, and people, millions of people got hooked on it, and now they're dealing with fentanyl. That's what actually happened. It has nothing to do with marijuana. Marijuana is still illegal in the United States. How could you say that? It's because
It's legal in many states. I believe now it's most. Okay, but on top of that, right, there is no more federal enforcement at the state level. The feds just stopped enforcing marijuana. Period. So here's my query to you.
It doesn't matter about enforcing, it's about the purchasing.
And here, fine, you can regulate pharmaceutical companies. I'm fine with that too. There are people who legitimately have pain management issues that need opioids. You and I can agree that that's
Of course, yeah, 100%.
So you have to control for that, right?
Yep.
And that's what they do right now is control for that, right?
No, the thing is they didn't control it properly. If you look
I don't mean
into
to interrupt,
yeah, go
guys,
ahead.
but it seems like
Yeah.
we're getting a little bit off topic.
True, we are.
of the
Okay, let me
immigration
read. Okay, let me read. I don't even need to finish my point. Okay, so going back to the border thing, right? Do you think that these drugs are coming in through the border, or are they coming in through highly
They're coming into the border.
But they're coming in highly planned, like in trucks that are padded, like that can pass all kinds of screening and checks. These aren't just like some guys putting drugs in his trunk and driving over.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And they stuff them in tires, and they stuff cocaine under hoods, and they put them, sometimes in women's vaginas. They do all kinds of things.
Wait, hang on. Sorry. Okay. Do you think that women bringing drugs over in their vaginas is a significant portion of the illegal drugs coming over the border, or is it high? How many women's vaginas would you need to bring that much drugs over?
Just the vagina. I'm
the
saying
asshole
that,
too? Like
yes, that too. But they do bring in large quantities of drugs.
no shot. But I guarantee the majority of drugs is coming over from highly well planned out systems where the trucks are like padded. They might even have like a Walmart sign on the outside of them and have goods on the inside. This shit is way harder than you think it is to control.
This is. You think that this is Freno from Breaking Fucking Bad? Or
It
what?
actually.
No.
Wait, do you think that stuff is
sophisticated? It's not just sophisticated syndicates. There are street dealers, and there are people who run low tech operations who bring massive quantities of drugs across the southern
I'd have
border.
to see that.
What do you mean you'd have to see it? The data is readily available for fucking everybody. Why would
I'd
it
have
not
to see it.
logically follow to you that massive quantities of drugs come across the southern border? Of course they do.
Wait, did I say? Wait, one second. Wait, did I say that massive amounts of drugs aren't coming from the?
But it's not just from syndicalism operations.
Of course it is. Wait, why would a drug? Wait, sorry, I'm so sorry. Why would a drug?
Only thing, man.
Why would a drug dealer? Or a drug producer who's gone through all the effort of producing the drugs in Mexico, give it to some random fuck to bring it over in their Honda Civic and not go through a proper
Can we all
system?
take a minute to laugh at this comment? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Heem.
I mean, like, I guess if you're a producer in Mexico, why would you risk putting it in a woman's vagina instead of going through like a highly technical method of bringing it over?
Because you can't always use sophisticated methodology to move product that's illegal
At bulk?
across borders. Huh?
At bulk?
Even at bulk, oftentimes what they do is they'll plant them inside of tires, things like this. Border Patrol are actually trained to look for these types of things, including so one of the big problems with your thesis here is you think that syndicalism creates massive drug cartels that then use Walmart trucks, like in Breaking Fucking Bad, to stuff them full of drugs and drive
Not full,
across
but
the border.
some. Sure.
Yeah. And so all of them are using what? Roadways. They have to use roadways to get in that way. Roadways have checkpoints, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what do you think they do at checkpoints?
I don't know. They're sneaking
Well,
in. They're getting by.
checkpoints because they fucking check.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah.
Okay, so it's pretty easy to open up the back of a fucking truck and check inside it, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, so it makes a lot more sense that you would be bringing drugs in, not on main roads and through checkpoints, right?
No, it doesn't. Because
No,
that's how. Wait, one second. Do you think that every single truck? Sorry, it's a bit of an echo again.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Do you think that every single truck that comes across the border, they're going thoroughly checking every fucking inside, outside, top, bottom? No, they're not. They open it, they take a look. If it looks okay, unless there's something suspicious, they'll let it through. Imagine how inefficient a system it would be if every single truck that crossed the border, they had to do an insane amount of we need to take the tires off, take a look under the engine, like deconstruct the entire truck and then put it back together. Like obviously.
So let's logically see if this follows in Heem's brain.
Let's do it.
So let's assume that it's a Breaking Bad situation and they're like bringing them up and.
Although I don't think this is a good point here from Heem, because I'm assuming with the response Andrew can have here is like, well, no, I want to have controls on both immigration and also the drug cartels as well. So I want to have I want to spend lots of money heavily policing the border over spending money elsewhere, being able to deal with the new immigrant population. So under the system that Andrew is proposing, like holistically, the money spent and the time spent thoroughly checking everybody at the border is money and time well spent. So you can't really argue against this when Andrew's not, claiming anything that's going to cut when the point that Heem is saying is bad is something that Andrew is very willing to go through to have to not deal with both the drug problem and the immigrant population.
Trucks that store chicken fat or whatever.
Sure.
Okay. The first time a Border Patrol agent makes a big score on one of those trucks, what's the first fucking thing that they're going to start checking from now on?
That company or that part of the truck or whatever.
Trucks that look like that.
But again, but they're not going to do it to every truck because it takes too long.
No, they will do it to every truck.
So then why aren't they doing it now?
Going between state lines. They'll stop your car, and if it even moderately looks suspicious, they'll say, go over to the side of the road. They'll search the vehicle. You've given up all of your rights going in and out of the continental United States. The Border Patrol's job is to literally do that. And yes, you can bribe Border Patrol. That's true. Okay, that does happen. But the syndicalism operations that you're talking about on this broad scale where they're just bringing up Walmart trucks full of fucking drugs doesn't even make sense on its face. The second you found that shit, what would happen?
I just explained why that wouldn't.
Quick thing. We're getting off of immigration again. We've gone pretty.
I guess okay, sure. Yeah. So what is your take on legal immigration?
Okay, so moving into legal immigration, I think that the best thing that we should do is we should use a sectored methodology. So what we should do is look at the job sectors that require workers, and then we should look specifically within our immigration platform in order to bring in the workers that are necessary to fill those jobs on a work visa, that those workers should be tracked, and that there's absolutely no reason to give them citizenship unless they apply for it legally, and they should not be fast-tracked. They should be in the same line as anybody else. They're already getting the massive benefit of being paid here on a worker program. And then their country of origin benefits massively through remittances.
So basically that's the current system, right?
No, it's not.
What's besides the family migration? It's the current system.
Well, family migration.
No, I'm saying besides that. That's besides that, right?
Okay, but you can't just say besides.
No, but I'm saying,
that.
are you agreeing that besides that, that's basically what the current system is?
No, it's still not. We still don't look at it through a sectored lens. We bring
there's
no, we bring in right now. The reason you can't. This is why I'm saying you can't ignore the family preference, because right now the amount of immigrants that we generally take in is mostly from south of the border. Okay, this is based on family ties. Most of them are unskilled. We're bringing in far more unskilled labor than we are skilled labor. What you should do instead is do it on a sector.
You think you're bringing in far more unskilled labor than skilled labor right now?
Far more, not even close.
Okay, I have to see that. Do you have any?
Then what you have to do is you have to then compare that to how it compares to the domestic population, because the vast majority of the domestic population are unskilled labor as well. It's only if that percentage is lower than the existing domestic population that's when it becomes a problem. And he's got to show me that with some evidence, because I've not seen any.
Do you have anything on that?
Never justify that is by saying, but construction's a skill. But the people who are coming in to work construction are doing things like concrete laying and mostly labor-intensive work. They're not doing what you would consider skilled labor, which is following outlets, doing heavy electrical work, design engineering, things like that is skilled labor. Unskilled labor is picking up boards and moving them.
Someone's got to do it though, right?
I didn't say somebody doesn't have to do it. What I'm saying is that you don't need such an overage of unskilled labor that you end up with a surplus of it, because that's a huge drain on our social benefits domestically in the United States. We should be looking at it.
When you say it's a drain, why is it that every economic paper that looks at immigration always shows that their net benefit to the
That's true, but it's sneaky.
Go ahead.
Because it talks about also the economic displacement of who?
The low skilled workers in the
and
country?
blacks specifically, yeah.
Okay.
It's just that the Voshes of the world will say, that's okay, Smooth Brain, because there's going to be so few.
That's a good Vosh impression.
There's going to be so few, Smooth Brain, of black people who are displaced that it'll be okay. They'll just get jobs over at the local Kellogg.
Okay.
I thought Vosh was in the room with us.
For real, that's a good Vosh impression. I guess first of all, I don't know if saying, can you lay concrete? I can't.
They don't lay concrete; they mix the concrete.
Okay.
But yes, I can lay concrete. Yes.
Impressive.
I can lay concrete. I can build a house. I can
really. And none of those are skilled. None of those require skilled labor. Okay.
No, skilled labor would be draft engineering, programming, CAD reading, millwrights, tool making. That's skilled labor. Unskilled labor is I have hammer, I have nail, I hit wall. That's unskilled labor.
Wait, you think that's what they're doing? They literally some American native born person's like nail.
What's the biggest justification for illegal immigration? Is for construction and for farming.
No. Excuse me. I'm sorry. What about doctors?
Okay, so real world example. Let's have a look at what has happened in the UK. We have sectors that were usually done by immigrant labor, etc., things like that, or from at least EU labor. They were allowed to live and work within the within the confines of the single market. That's the word I was looking for, right? Okay, so now a lot of them have gone. We now have, fruit picking. We have meat packing. We have lorry driving, etc., etc. All of these professions that were traditionally done by these groups of people. Now all the immigrants have gone. You would then expect, well, wait, there's loads of jobs now open for the native domestic population. Are the native domestic population doing those jobs? Are they? Fuck, they're not doing it, because it's something they don't want to do. It's something they don't want to do. It's too even even when the fruit picking has been high paid. This is the interesting bit. Fruit picking has been a job because they've lost so much of a surplus of immigrant labor. They've put up their wages so high that it's much higher than what it would be at some other kind of retail job or something like that. And people still won't take up the jobs because they just don't want to do it. They don't want to have to walk around picking up fruit all day. And you're not going to fill that unless you force people to work in these places. The only way you're going to fill these jobs is with the immigrants who are actually happy to do that labor.
For illegal immigrants?
No, we're not talking about illegal immigrants. We've
No,
moved
I
on
would
to
say
legal.
for illegal immigrants, the justification is you need someone to pick the fruit, right? And you need someone to go do the construction. That's all highly unskilled labor.
There is no justification for illegal immigrants besides the fact that you guys don't want to make them legals. I don't want to have any illegal immigrants. I want them to be.
Actually, when you look at the UK and you look at the level to which skilled labour has increased, for example, look at the way in which the amount of people from the current generation and the generation that are coming up as well, the Zoomers, the amount of people who have university degrees, right? If you want to have a market in which you have a level of unskilled labour and then a level of skilled labour on top of that as well, and then it stratifies, etc., we're going to reach such a problem moving forward if we do not have the people to do the bottom rung of that ladder, because there's going to be some people who come out of university with degrees who don't actually want to do the low skilled labor because once we lose all the immigration, there's somebody's going to have to fill those jobs. People want McDonald's, people want to shop at H&M. You have people to work in these places, and if you remove the immigrants who would traditionally do those jobs, nobody's going to fill them because the people who have the degrees are not going to want to do them, and it's been shown with what's happened post Brexit.
So I was right, and your solution to illegal immigration is to just legalize all the illegal immigrants.
I already agreed to that right at the
Why
start.
even have a fucking border? Why not just repatriate Mexico and make it the 51st state?
Because there's a lot. You have to still, because you have, like you said, social safety nets, system, taxes.
So it has to be controlled.
Yes.
So we can't make incentives by just legalizing fucking everything.
Wait, we already went over this. I already said.
You just got done saying you did. You wanted to just legalize them and that'll solve the problem. Murder legal, and that'll solve the problem of murder.
I already said that the incentive is there for people to come. That's why they come, even though they're not getting legal status.
And I want to take that incentive away.
What is it? To make America shittier? That's the only incentive.
How would that make America shittier?
No, I'm saying the only incentive to stop illegal immigrants from coming is to make America a shittier place, a shittier destination for them. Right now, the incentive is there for them to come because even though they're illegal,
comparatively, right? If you make their country better, like if you want to take the other route and say, well, look, we should spend money to make sure that we don't destabilize South American nations who, I don't know, have some kind of political ideology that we disagree with. People can be less inclined to come forward. That's true. That's something you can definitely say. But the incentive that they're having to come here is I guess the lax immigration, I guess I say lax because I would disagree with that, but the level to which one can come to the United States and then be able to go through the immigrant pathway is easy enough, and the living conditions of their host country or their previous country are so bad that they want to be able to move. Like, if you want to be able to remove that incentive, either you have to say that immigration is bad and you stop it, or you have to change the incentive structure that's in place, right? I'm firmly of the idea that we should just open the border. I don't even care. Like, you can track people, you can give people visas, you can understand who's who, you can make cases based upon, for example, if somebody has a criminal record in another country, that should be a thing that you should be able to use to send people away from, being able to come into the country. But the idea that we just tell people they can't come into the country because they don't have the correct, because they, because of they're from the wrong country, or we've met a quota or a cap, or they're not allowed to work because they're an immigrant. That's where I have an issue.
It's still worth it for them. Penalties, massive penalties for being found inside the country illegally. The same way that other nations have massive penalties for people who are found illegally inside of their nation. If you made a mandatory 15-year prison sentence, I guarantee you, it's going to cut down massively on illegal immigration, Heem.
I don't know about that. I think people would still come.
They would still come for the 3 hots and the cot and the prison rape, huh?
I mean, they would come because it would be worth the risk. That's why.
How would it be worth the risk for a 15-year mandatory sentence, let's say?
I don't know. I'm just telling you that when people choose to leave their country, they're not doing it because they're living some comfortable life or something. They're doing it because they're doing it out of desperation.
No, that's a false dichotomy. It is true that some may be doing it out of desperation.
Do you think you have to guess?
Like they're leaving a job? I don't leave.
Can I ask you what
another higher paying job?
Can I ask you what would you say is?
But Heem's doing such a bad job here. It's frustrating because I really enjoy Heem's content. But I guess he's less of a debate bro and more just somebody who likes to comment on things, right? I think that's more his kind of wheelhouse rather than actual like blood sportsy type debates. Well, no, but we're not talking about war-torn states here, Josh. We're talking about economic migrants, people moving because their country is shitty, not moving because their country is literally at war. That would make them a refugee, not a migrant.
percentage, if you had to guess a percentage, like between people that leave for illegally out of desperation versus memes?
I would say about 10% are actually desperate.
Okay.
Desperate.
I think that's a
I would
hilarious.
say it would be a 90% brokerage of people who just want to see a massive pay increase. Human motivation is not difficult to assess or ascertain. If you're going to make more money somewhere else doing the exact same thing, what are you going to do, Heem?
Not try. I don't know. It depends. It depends on how much. Listen, like let's say I told you you can make more money, but you have to drive 7 hours to work every single day there and back. Then you might consider, hey, no, this is too much of an inconvenience for me
Okay,
to
but
go
let's
through
just
that
say that
trouble.
the two jobs are right next to each other.
Well, in this case, they're not right next to each other.
They're
You
a
have to
couple hundred miles away. Would you
No, hang on. Sorry. I'm sorry. One
relocate a
sec.
couple
One sec. You have to
Yeah.
leave your country, leave your family and your connections or whatever it is that you have, your entire roots. You have to literally uproot your entire life in one country and go to another country that who knows if you speak the language or whatever. You think that that's comparable to two jobs that are side by side?
Yeah. Do you think that I wouldn't leave my country to go to the EU for a $50,000 increase?
Depends.
No,
Some
it
people,
doesn't depend. I
listen.
would fucking go, man, for a $50,000 increase. The motivations.
It depends how comfortable you are. It depends how comfortable you are in your current situation.
The only reason
Wait, one second.
you're making complexities out of this is because that's the only way in your brain you can justify the current immoral system of just allowing helter-skelter whoever to come across the southern border and infiltrate our economy, use social stolen security numbers, steal people's identities, and displace the most socioeconomic vulnerable amongst us, which would be black people. Smooth brain.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give you. I know obviously this is just a one-off example. I myself could come to the United States and make probably close to double what I make here in Canada. Well, what I will be making when I finish my degree. However, it's still a consideration for me because I'm living a pretty comfortable life here. I like living in Canada, so I don't think it's just the case that
People like living in Mexico. All of Mexico is not coming across the border. There's
exactly.
But,
So wait, what does that tell you? So that it shows you that it's out of desperation.
No,
I want to give him a chance to get his point out.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, I'll just reiterate. My original point was that people are coming illegally because they think that there's an incentive to come to America. And that incentive, even though they're illegal, even though they don't get to take advantage of all the they're running the risk of getting caught by ICE. They don't get to be fully integrated into society, whatever. That even though they know that exists, that they still do it because they're desperate. And you're making the claim that they're somehow comfortable or something. And then I said that clearly they're not, because I'm an example of someone who wouldn't just leave for money. And then you said exactly. Wait, sorry, let me just finish. And then you said exactly. That's why not all of Mexico's coming.
You're reframing the argument. Let's make this very clear. The difference between somebody making $50,000 a year and making $80,000 a year, you might be able to make these comfort comparisons. Somebody making $25,000 a year, just an increase to $35,000 a year is fucking life changing.
So you mean they're desperate?
That's not desperation.
Oh my god.
It's just a cost of life increase. Doesn't mean that you're starving to death. Doesn't even mean that you're living poorly. It just means that it can be
that it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk.
Right. Well, everything is based around risk assessment to a person. Exactly. But that doesn't mean it's desperation. That's loaded language.
Okay, but what I'm saying is you're saying you have to de-incentivize them from coming. I guess it's like there's already so many. There's lack of incentive already exists. Like there's so many things that. Oh, sorry, you're muted. You're muted.
What's the lack of incentive? You want to give them all citizenship?
I do, yeah, but that's currently not the system, and yet people still come.
What was proposed by Joe Biden is probably going to happen.
You think that's going to happen?
I think that, yes. I think it's likely
based
like
Biden.
it happened under Reagan. And now would be a real good time to get into the United States if it's going to, huh?
Dope. All right, let's go. Biden 2024.
If you were somebody who was thinking about crossing the border and you knew that there was going to be a general amnesty that would lead to citizenship, you don't think that would be a powerful incentive?
Again, yes, that would be. But this is a two different situation.
Well, that's
right?
the debate then. You're creating an incentive.
There's two different things here. One is, again, I'm going to say that. I think I said this 3 times. One is, how do you control people from getting in? And I'm for having that be. Listen, I'm not saying open the border and let anybody in.
Wall, right?
The wall's not going to work.
How do you know? We never built it.
A lot of the wall was built, and it's not going to work because the majority of people we already mentioned that the majority of people who come overstay their visas.
A lot of the car was built. I don't know why it doesn't drive.
Do you think that a
lot of it was built after all? Why won't the car drive?
But we already
we
already discussed that.
Also, the border wall literally does nothing because everyone comes through checkpoints. As Andrew has already pointed out in this discussion, the vast majority of people who come up through the southern border do so through checkpoints. Because if you don't come up through a checkpoint, you have to just be stranded in the middle of the desert, right? That's not. You're not going to be able to. Let's have a look at the map of Texas. Right, let's have a look at this border, and let's have a look. For example, let's say you're coming up. Where's kind of the main kind of border checkpoints? I don't really know. But there's whole national state parks you have to trek up through. Like there's an interstate up here, and then there's this whole area of nothing here. I mean, maybe if you're in this area, there's a lot of checkpoints and things right around there. Like there's so much empty space around these southern border states. The wall is just a pointless idea because so much of what the wall would have to be is just a place where there is no theoretical way in which someone could actually get into the country. It reminds me of the Like the James O'Keefe video where he dresses up as Bin Laden and just crosses across a river in the middle of right in the middle of fucking nowhere, as if that made any kind of point.
The majority of people are coming are overstaying their visas. It's not just willy-nilly walking across. Some do, and those people would be stopped because of
It's
the
not
wall.
some. There's a large, and we don't even know how many illegals. One and two. Yes, it's true that a lot of people overstay their visas coming into the United States. We have no idea what the offset to that is with illegal immigration, though.
What do you mean by offset?
So if we can't count how many illegals are here, we can't definitively say that most people come in.
Wouldn't that be an argument to legitimize them and like
No, it
get them
wouldn't be,
under?
because
Why, you don't like
the
to wait
only
one sec? Do you hate the census?
No.
So why wouldn't you want to know what's happening in your country, including these millions of people who are living there illegally? Isn't that weird?
No, it's not weird.
But you don't. But you just said you want to know.
Why
pro
would a person
census.
who's living here illegally go ahead and tell the census that, Heem?
No, I'm saying currently they wouldn't, obviously, but under the thing that I'm advocating for, which is giving them a pathway to citizenship, eventually they would become citizens, and then eventually they would be able to participate in the census. You'd have a better
sure.
idea.
If you made them all legal, then it solves the problem of illegal immigration. Like I
Yeah.
said, you would say that's what progressives always say.
Oh my god!
Right?
All right.
This is the
And then, you know, they say it because it's completely fucking based. Just open the border, don't give a shit. Do it. Fuck it.
is the bait and switch, right?
It's not, though.
Just give all illegals citizenship, and then we don't have to worry about them being illegal
No, I think the Great Wall of China would be bigger.
anymore.
I
It's
feel-
absurd on its face. You say these three issues are all separate issues. That's true, but
Two
can you
issues.
concede at least? Can you concede at least that issues can be separate but be intertwined, meaning that both of them have to be tackled at once in order for the issue to be solved?
Yeah, but in different ways.
Okay,
One-
maybe in different ways, but I'm saying that these are intertwined issues.
No, but-
they both have to be attacked at the same time to solve the problem. You can't say these are separate issues. We'll just work on one at a time.
But different issues
can
can have
people who are here amnesty and citizenship.
a pathway
How's that
to
going
it.
to solve
A pathway,
the
like
illegal, how's it
okay,
gonna
I'll
solve
tell
the
you.
illegal immigration problem?
Okay, I'll tell you. First of all, when you say illegal immigration problem, what is the problem besides the fact that they're actually illegal and you don't have ability to understand who's who and how many of them?
Finally, actually getting into a normative discussion here, rather than just going, well, it's bad because it's illegal, or, well, it shouldn't be illegal. Right, okay, why should it or shouldn't it be illegal? Now, actually getting into the real fucking brass tacks that we should have got into a fucking hour ago.
Immoral. It's immoral to give preferential treatment to people who skipped in line, Heem.
Is it though?
Yes, it is.
What if they're fucking more in need? When my parents applied for immigration, okay?
You have to prove that they're more in need of people who applied 20 years prior. Didn't your parents come in legally?
Yeah, my parents came in legally, and when we applied, we had to wait 6 years to get accepted to Canada, and America didn't even respond. Australia didn't even respond in that 6 years. However, I am still saying that it's not like it's either me or a refugee. We can both come in, and I can concede that sometimes, yes, some people's situations are far worse, and I'm perfectly okay with them skipping the
What
line.
about the situation, the moral situation of everybody inside the United States, the millions who live under the poverty line currently, that we could be moving those resources towards in order to move them out of the poverty line and increase the domestic birth rate, knowing that we're just kicking the can down the road and that we're not going to be able to just replace the domestic population with immigrants in the near future. We're talking 40, 45 years.
Okay, like I guess I don't know what you mean by that. Like,
Just do both. Just do both. It's fine. You can just do both.
can you
I'm
repeat it?
saying
Can you
that
rephrase
if
it?
the birth rates from the countries that we're getting immigrants from right now fall below replacement levels, we're not going to be able to just replace the domestic population anymore with immigrants.
Sure, you could. Why not? Just keep
Because
bringing them
they
in.
can't fucking replicate. That's why.
If those countries are okay with their people leaving, then they'll let them leave. Who cares? What do you mean?
There's not enough of them to leave, is what I'm saying, man. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Do you think that this is like there's literally billions of people that live in the world? Why do you think that this is a
And within a few, and this is the problem with progressives, you can't see the fucking forest through the trees. Just because there's billions of people who live in the world right now, what are the projections in 45 years? The projection in 45 years, China's going to lose 500,000 people out of 1 billion.
500,000? What's wrong with 500,000?
500,000 people at 1 billion is like 5%. I think it's 5%. I'm like such a fucking idiot if I've got that wrong.
Okay.
Going to be gone off the face of the planet
What do you mean?
because they're not, their birth rate is diminishing at such a rate that within 45 years, 500,000 people in China will disappear off the face of the planet.
500,000 is literally nothing compared to their population.
They have 1 billion. That's half. What do you mean it's nothing?
500,000 is not half of 1 billion.
That's even lower than that, isn't it? 500,000 is 1 million, so it's like 0.02%. Oh, my mental math is terrible. I have 2 A-levels in maths and a degree in physics. I should know this calculation in my head. I'm such a... I can't believe I embarrassed myself like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 500 million.
Okay, that's totally different.
Yeah, 500 million. I'm sorry. I misspoke. It's 500
Okay. So you're saying that
All right.
China's projected to drop half of their population
half
within...
their domestic population of 500 million. Sorry, it wasn't 1,000. I misspoke.
Okay.
Yes. Do you want the study for that?
Yeah, I'd like to see that, I guess. If you have it. We're echoing.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, it's okay. So anyways, I wanted to say, so then in that case, then the immigration problem will go away. It'll level off at some point.
That's the stupidest fucking thing that I ever heard.
If there's not enough people...
Right, okay, so if you have a problem with your birth rates in your country, right, the 2 solutions are increased birth rates or immigration. If you have the simple, well, we need to increase both. If you have increased the birth rate at the same time and then the immigration drops off, then at least you've done all you can on both of those things, right? I don't see the issue here with taking a two-pronged approach to this.
Well, then it'll level off. What's the? What do you? Why is it?
Because
the demand
right
will go
now,
down
the
to want
policy is
to come in.
replace listen to me.
The reason why the country's so bad is not because of voting habits. It's because of imperialism and colonialism and, you know, resource extraction, etc. Like, do you think that, you know, places like Nicaragua are in the conditions that they're in just because people voted badly, or because, you know, of things like the Iran-Contra affair, etc., etc.
If
or people, or like banana pickers in Colombia being gunned down, like, because of anti-union movements from American corporations that, you know, that operated in the area.
level off the immigration policy, fine. You might have solved one problem, but you still have not solved the problem of your domestic population not having enough babies to replicate themselves. Do you understand that?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
so just saying, well, what'll happen is eventually there won't be enough people for one demographic to move into.
Yeah, and there can be no outside, and there's just like no outside forces that exert themselves on nations at all. Everything lives in its own little individual bubble where things happen and things don't based upon what the people inside there do. Come on, you're smarter than that.
Another demographic. That's true, but it's really kind of just kicking the can down the fucking road.
And what is the can?
What's that?
What's the can?
The
Okay.
birth rate crisis, massive birth rate crisis.
Okay. I guess like if the population levels off naturally because people don't want to have kids and people don't want to immigrate, then if people don't have kids and people can't immigrate or don't want to immigrate, then what do you want me to do? We can't do anything about that.
What I want you to do is utilize the resources that you're spending on mass migration to the United States to replace the domestic population on replacing the fucking domestic population now.
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. So you're telling me that immigration is a net loss right now, economically? So when you're saying spend, you just said
stop. You're getting way off my fucking point.
Okay, say it again.
Let's try this so that you understand completely what I'm saying to you. What I'm saying to you is that right now, the policy is to bring in domestic immigrants to replace domestic citizens because of the falling birth rate.
When you say domestic immigrants, what do you mean?
Domestic people inside the United States, immigrants or non, doesn't matter.
You just,
Anybody,
okay, I don't know.
whatever the
You
population
misspoke, I think. You misspoke, so say it again.
But what I'm saying to you is that the domestic population is being basically subsidized by an immigrant population. We have falling birth rates across the board, regardless of race.
Do you think
what race?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, there are a lot of the economy does run on immigrants currently. Yeah. But you just said that we should stop wasting the resources that we were spending on the immigrants.
No, we need the domestic population to be drastically increased.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes, and you can do that through multiple means. I don't know why this is so difficult for him. You don't just we've done the immigration things, we've just not bothered increasing the birth rate. That's ludicrous. It's just nonsense talking points to try and deflect. It doesn't make any sense.
The domestic population needs to increase. The birth rate needs to go up.
Okay, but you said specifically
is eventually you won't even be able to replace the domestic population with immigrants because their fucking domestic populations will be too low too.
Okay, but you just said that we should take the resources we're putting into immigration to funnel it towards domestic encouraging of having children. Yes.
Yes.
That's what you said. And what I said is that doesn't work because immigrants are actually a net benefit to the economy. So how are you going to?
Why are they a net benefit?
Because they're producing. They're producing.
So if we had an increase in domestic population, what would we need them to come in and produce for? Heem?
Sorry, I just got a sub. 1 second. Say it again. Oh yeah, go ahead. Say it
Why
again.
would we need to bring them in to produce if our domestic population was large enough to produce for ourselves?
You wouldn't, obviously.
Right.
Say it. But what I'm saying is you're making it out like there's so much money that's going into this toilet of immigration right now.
Yes,
but it's not a toilet because it's actually producing. That's what I'm saying.
It's producing.
It's overproducing what it costs.
It's producing a benefit in GDP. That's true.
Yeah.
But that is not how you judge the health of a nation. One. Two, the big problem that you have is so what? There's more at stake than just fucking money here. We're talking about long-term extermination. Right?
You were talking about a financial issue into the first place. We're saying, well, we've not got enough resources to be able to both deal with this and also increase the domestic birth rate, which I think is nonsense. You can clearly deal with both of the things anyway. And then Heem says, well, actually, immigrants are an economic benefit, which we gain both economically, both on a private and also public level. He's like, well, actually, no, it doesn't matter about the money. Like, stick to your fucking angle, Andrew. If you just think immigrants are bad because they dilute the cultural nature of the nation, sure, let's have a debate about that. But you cannot make the financial argument when you've already admitted that they increase the GDP, and you know they also increase other things. You know, on a kind of business scale as well.
What do you mean by extermination?
I'm telling you, right there in the private chat, I just linked it to you. China's population could have within the next 45 years, according to a new study, half. 500 billion people.
Theoretically. Okay.
Look at the domestic birth rate in the United States right now. Superbly low. In Mexico, it's dropping, and all of the South American nations, it's dropping. You're not going to just be able to replace the domestic population soon with immigrants to get that big, massive GDP number. So why wouldn't you be filtering that cash from taking care of everybody on the fucking planet and not filter it towards incentivizing the domestic population to drastically increase so that you don't have to rely?
I mean, he doesn't. I know he doesn't like them. Not exactly it. Not that if you were like into the whole Twitch politics thing, like it wouldn't be any much of a surprise. But at least we're actually getting down to the real argument that it's a hand here rather than just fucking obfuscating everywhere.
On immigrant labor.
When you say cash taking care of everyone on the entire planet, what do you mean by that?
first generation immigrants are a net drain. It's only
Nope.
by the second or
No,
third
they're not.
generation. Yes, they are.
No, the immigrants now that they're letting in are actually right away. Hang on, I got fucking.
You mean legal immigrants? We're talking about there's illegal immigrants too. You realize this, right?
How would you know if you don't know the numbers?
How
Like-
do I know that there's illegal? You can
No,
still
I'm
make
saying-
estimates, Heem.
Okay,
What do you mean?
but okay. What I'm saying is, why not just make? First of all, we're having two different conversations. We were talking about legal immigration,
They're
and now we're going
intertwined.
legal immigration and illegal immigration.
Yes, they're very much intertwined, man.
Okay.
How are they not?
I guess because they're two separate things that should be treated. You're trying to paint with such a broad brush. I feel like.
No, I'm taking
Right now,
two
the-
things
right
that
now,
are
legal-
relative to each other. We're talking about immigration policy. Would that include illegal immigration?
Okay. Immigration policy. I guess yeah, I would. But
Yeah, it would.
But it's why not look at why are you looking at such a broad scope? Why not zoom in a little bit more?
I'm zooming in. I'm giving you the most viable solution that's possible. The most viable solution to the immigration crisis inside the continental United States would be to take all resources that we possibly could in order to bolster the domestic population so that we were no longer reliant on an immigrant population coming in.
But then you would also have to spend money policing the border as well, whilst also negating the economic benefits you get out of immigration. Like, I don't disagree that increasing the native birth rate is a bad idea. Canada has a really much lower birth rate than the United States. But that doesn't mean you cannot also have policies to be able to bring in immigrants as well. And then if Andrew was saying, later on, then their replacement rates of the host countries are going to go down. So also from the immigrant countries rather, goes down so far that then they cannot then immigrate to be able to replace the birth rates in the United States. You've then done all the legwork at the start as well. There's no reason why you can't do this too. There's not an argument against immigration. That's just an argument for trying to increase native birth rates, which I don't necessarily disagree with.
In to subsidize our birth rate. And that's what's going on.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say that you were able to subsidize it, okay, and we cut off immigration right now, and so on and so forth. And then we incentivize domestic Americans to have children, and so on and so forth. I don't know what that incentivization is. We can talk about that after. But let's say that when you incentivize, the majority of the birth rate amongst, let's say, Black people is the one that actually sees the biggest increase, and slowly over time, America just becomes a Black majority country. You don't care about that?
Care.
Okay.
No,
or Mexican or a Hispanic majority?
Yeah, I don't care about that either.
Okay, so you just only care about the fact that they're born in America?
I care that the domestic population drastically increased. Now, to be fair,
But the domestic population is made up of immigrants. So, like, their kids,
but-
you know, like,
so what?
obviously, what I'm saying is,
here's the thing.
wait, so what I'm saying is, when you bring an
You're a
immigrant,
United States citizen, right?
okay,
And claim immigrant status. You're not an immigrant anymore.
I only said self-proclaimed. I don't have any data on this issue. Although I was the first person to upload a 0-death, 200% difficulty run on YouTube.
You're
okay.
just a citizen.
okay, hang on. I mean, I'm a citizen in Canada, and I still immigrated here. I'm sure a lot of people
Yeah,
hate
I
the
get
fact
it, but I mean, are you Canadian?
I'm Iranian Canadian. Yeah,
So
both.
Canadian.
I'm both. What do you mean? I
You
go
hold
to
dual citizenship?
yeah.
Well, then you are the exception. But what I'm saying is that people who don't hold dual citizenship, they only have one ethnicity. which is
Okay,
their
pause.
nationality.
Let's say an immigrant comes and is like, listen, I promise you, if you let me into this country, I will renounce my citizenship to the original country I'm from, and I will become American on this day forward, and my kids will be born in
Yeah,
America.
that
and
would
they'll
be great, but it has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
It does.
How?
What do you mean? Because what I'm trying to get at is
I'm
like,
not saying origin nation is the problem. What I'm saying is that the domestic population needs to drastically increase in order for us to not become dependent on immigrants coming into the United States to subsidize our population decrease. And here's why that's a good idea, because you're not going to be able to do that indefinitely due to global falling birth rates. So you want to get on top of it now. The best thing that you can do is utilize resources to do that.
okay, so why? So what I'm trying to get at basically is like, it's weird how, like, let's say you stop immigration today. Okay, now there are some people that are American citizens.
I'm not advocating to stop immigration today, but what I'm advocating for is a sectored immigration policy that's based specifically on skills and work visas so that we can get the work done, but you don't have to naturalize them. You can allow in X amount that can be culturally integrated without creating social cohesion problems.
You're saying
This
if
is what I
someone
advocate for.
comes and works there, if someone comes and works there for like 10 years, then they still have no right to live in America afterward?
No, what right would they have? You have no such right.
They've contributed to
Japan. Japan.
One sec, sorry.
500,000.
I don't care about Japan. I will criticize every country. I don't give a fuck.
Obligation? What's their moral obligation?
Why? I'm not talking about moral obligation.
Okay,
I'm talking.
so if there's no moral obligation, why would
Okay,
you
I'll even give you a moral obligation. Do you think that after 10 years of living somewhere that you don't consider that place home?
You might, but there's no moral obligation for the citizenry there to give you citizenship. You've already been.
You're okay with
compensated.
kicking people out of their homes? That's not
They-
immoral?
Okay, do you know what right to work is?
Go ahead and tell me.
Okay, right to work means that you can eliminate the contract with your employer anytime you want to, and your employer can eliminate the contract with you anytime they want to. at a
Okay.
job,
Okay.
right? What is the moral imperative that the employer somehow make me a citizen of the company?
The citizen of the company?
Yeah.
There's
they
no
have
company
moral-
citizenship.
I don't think he's specifically an ethno-nationalist. I just think he thinks that I think he's one of these kind of Western values type paleocons, basically. Whereas I don't think that he thinks that legal immigrants coming and gaining citizenship, as long as they're culturally assimilated, isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that he would want to say that we shouldn't let any non-white people into the country. He just thinks that they should be culturally American. It's definitely paleoconservatism and definitely what kind of like covert white supremacy, but I wouldn't call it like ethno-nationalism specifically. Then your dream goal is specifically an ethno state where you wouldn't let anybody in if they didn't have some specific skin color. I don't think you're saying that.
Right. So this is what I'm saying. They're already being compensated for coming in and working at a company. Why is there a moral obligation to give them citizenship? That's bizarre. It makes no sense.
You're not getting citizenship from the. Go ahead, Stardust.
Sorry. There's a super chat. It says, would you be in favor? This is from GM. Would you be in favor of UBG, Universal Basic Girlfriends, to increase the domestic birth rate?
Only if you're suave enough to get one, GM. But that's the thing. It's like you got to be able to get one. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I guess
I'll pull that.
I think that it's gone further than that now. Like people like Richard Spencer and Jason Kessler also lost their lawsuits. These people just deliberately said that they want to be like. There's plenty of people who just think that America should be an ethnically pure nation, regardless of that, or there should at least be ethnically pure enclaves or whatever. I think that over time, immigrants do become culturally assimilated. I don't think that's a real problem. I do think that you can take policy to make sure that it happens quicker. Like, for example, the anti-enclave policy from Denmark that I mentioned before. I think that's a good policy. Like stopping them from forming enclaves by making sure that they're settled in kind of majority white neighborhoods. That's a good idea to get them culturally assimilated, right? I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. But Andrew's making the claim that like any large amounts of immigration are going to make the culture worse, and he's not demonstrated that.
I didn't see it, Stardust. I was engaged with Heem. Would you be in favor of UBG, Universal Basic Girlfriends? No, I'm.
Well, yeah. How would you
basic wives?
How would you increase the the birth rate? I guess
the domestic birth rates. It's complex, and I don't think that that's the subject for the debate. But let's just assume for a second that it could be increased. If it could be increased necessarily, it would make it the best idea to increase it, rather than rely completely and totally on immigrants coming in.
I mean, it depends. In a way, sorry, I have to pause you. It depends, because I can give you a way to make it guaranteed that you'll increase your birth rate. You make it forced. Every woman is forced to have 3 babies. That's a way you can do it. But I don't think that I would advocate for that. I would still say immigration.
Let's assume whatever the policy is an incentive-based policy, not a force-based one. How about that?
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, you can see that there are ways that you can increase the
violently putting a gun to a woman's head and making them have children. That's not really what we're talking about.
Okay, I'm just pointing. Yeah.
How are you? What kind of incentive do you think you could provide that would be good enough to truly incentivize people to have a child, right, and bring up, because that is 18 years at least of.
18 years is not that long of a time. People constantly point to an 18-year mark for cross generation, like that's some long period of time. It's really not, right? You can probably remember what you were doing 18 years. It's not that long of a time.
Oh my God.
But it's not that long of a time. It's a drop in the hat.
But you need to have 3 of them as well.
Well, women on average.
Yeah, like the average. Yeah.
But here's the thing, right?
Wait, why not make all of them have? I guess incentivize all of them.
You would incentivize all of them. Here's how you could do that. You could do that with things like if you're married and you have 3 children, you no longer pay income tax. That would be a fantastic policy. That would strive for the middle class. That would really make the middle class boom. We'd probably see a massive birth boom. That would actually help make the lower class.
Can I ask you a question? Let's say that does happen, right? But then your bridges start falling apart. Your
bridges start falling
because you're not bringing enough tax revenue.
You're not exempting all tax. You're only digging into the income tax.
You think income tax is not a big deal? I guess, or
it is a big deal. But the thing is that if you're going to increase,
because listen, if you tell me that you will,
there's an income tax increase, it's often targeted towards the wealthiest Americans, but yet somehow the middle class end up paying the most in burden in taxation, and never actually seems to get to the upper class, does it? This is a massive.
Well, you're right, B43, like B543, like a lot of these issues are kind of exacerbated or caused by the fact that rightoid narratives that are strong regarding immigrant populations leads to discohesion between the native domestic population and the native domestic population and the immigrant population. These kind of fear-driven narratives exacerbate these issues, which is a convenient foil to then push against the immigration narrative. Say, well, these people are having a terrible time. They would integrate because we keep being shitty to them. And I was like, well, stop being shitty then. They'll be fine.
Massive problem. Then when you're talking about inequality, right? And you want these stupid things like UBI. How about instead of giving them a UBI, you just cut their fucking income tax by 20%, and then they still get the same $1,500 a month.
There's already
you know what
tax
I mean?
incentives though, right?
Yeah, but the tax incentives are very low. You're talking about $3,200 per year per child. And if you're in the middle class and you're making, let's say, $75,000 or $80,000 a year, you might have to put more into the system than you're getting out, and all that becomes is a subsidy. So the thing is that exempting the middle class and the lower class from taxes if they have 3 children, you're going to see a massive birth increase.
Of course, yeah, fuck yeah, I would have 3 kids.
You know what you can do? You can tax the corporations and the fucking upper class and actually enforce it. That would probably be helpful, wouldn't it?
I mean, listen, we can get into a whole thing about why corporate taxation is so difficult because fucking they move money around, they reinvest, they don't claim profits. That's why income tax is such an easier thing to actually get from people than
yeah, well,
tax.
because you just take it direct from the employer. But let me tell you, you would still have sales tax, you would still have resale tax, you'd still have capital gains tax, you'd still have all kinds of taxes to keep the bridges going, including the gas tax, which is what your road is paid with. You'd still have a property tax, which is what your schools are paid with, right? The only thing you would have to maybe reduce would be military and social welfare spending. Okay, and the middle class bears the brunt of the burden for all of that via the income tax. It's fucking absurd. And if you were to exempt it, you would see a massive birth rate boom. And who cares if it's an 18-year investment? That's nothing.
But it also has to replace the tax incentive or the incentive you give them also has to replace the mother's wages for that period of time as well, right?
Okay, do you realize how much in taxation you pay if you're making like 75,000, 80,000 a year? You're paying about 40%.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Okay, about 40%. Now, do you think that if you gave a family a 40% increase to the breadwinner, that would not eliminate the need for the spouse to have a job? Because that sounds kind of absurd on its face to me.
Well, it'd have to be 50% literally to bring it up.
No, that's assuming that way.
That they make the same, yeah. Okay.
They're not equal. Heads of households always make more money.
Okay.
Now, sometimes that's women, but most often it is men.
And yeah, go ahead, Stardust. I think yeah.
Yes. So we did get kind of off of immigration again, but I do want to give him like 20 seconds to maybe respond and then bring it back to immigration.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I don't know. I've seen some places have tried to incentivize having births besides like actually forcing the women by penalty, or you know, I can't really see how. I don't know. It seems to me that like as time has gone on, it's not that women. It just seems like women don't want to have children. Like they don't want to be a baby factory. They actually enjoy their autonomy.
I mean, the data does show that the more economically developed a country is, the less people are incentivized to want to give birth, right? So maybe if you want to, maybe just tear down all the factories, tear down all of the industrialization. Maybe people want to have more children, I guess. But
autonomy, they enjoy getting an education and so on and so forth. And like I don't know. I feel like that's the reason why. And how are you going to disincentivize getting an education? Or
what baby factory is pretty slanderous to say that a woman having multiple children and following the natural maternal instincts that they've had since the dawn of time, along with men, which is to impregnate them,
sure.
is somehow them being a baby factory. That to me just sounds like it's antinatalist, rhetorical nonsense. You're a baby factory. They're not fucking baby factories. They're having children, for God's sake.
Yeah, but wait one second.
Baby factory.
Okay, they're having children.
But if they're having children because the state is incentivizing them to do so rather than because they genuinely want to have them, for example, then you kind of are treating them like a baby factory, right?
But they're also having it at an age where, for example, a lot of them want to go to university or start a career. It just seems that when it comes to
healthy age.
Well, yeah, it just
seems
the
most healthy.
Yes. In that age, yeah. Unfortunately, in that.
So before you joined the stream, actually, B45, there's a point I was making, which you look at, for example, if you look at something like manufacturing, immigration keeps manufacturing in the Western countries, right? So the immigrant population is who staffs these factories. If the immigrants weren't there, they would move overseas. You have enough of the domestic population working in the higher, like the senior roles or the managerial roles, which is then supplemented by the immigrants who do like the lower paid jobs within those factories. So they're then disincentivized from moving overseas. Whereas if all the immigrants went, those go, well, there's no cheap labor here anymore, so I'm going to move away.
Age where you are the most primed to have a child, women are choosing to go get a career and have, because they want to be independent and they don't want to feel like they're the lesser between them and themselves and a man. That seems to be the choice that they're making. I don't know.
No, it's
Stardust. What do you think? You're the woman here.
I'm sorry. I don't know that I can really comment on this because I'm the moderator, but
no, it's all
I do
good.
have a lot of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do have another debate I have to get to.
Okay, let's do questions. Yeah,
push 8:30.
Let's do it.
We can move into closing and questions. Yeah, that'd be.
Yeah. Why don't you guys
Okay.
give your closing? I have some questions. I know Chad has some questions too.
Okay. Did you want me to go first, Heem?
Sure, you go first.
Okay, so
True, but then industry is more likely to pop up once you have an immigrant population to be able to do the jobs, right? If you do not have like a lot of industry in lots of these countries is just gone because it's all in Bangladesh or in China or in Taiwan or whatever, or in Indonesia. So, there's no reason for you to build a factory in that area. Once you have the population with which to be able to staff them, and the market with which to do so, then they're more likely to be able to pop up. Whereas, we have this dysfunctional system where all of the manufacturing is done either in Germany, which is where a lot of the European manufacturing is done, or in Bangladesh, Taiwan, China, Indonesia, etc. Then that's never going to get fixed. You're right, Freddie. How you doing?
In closing, we've seen that my hypothesis about the
We're
progressive
struggling to fill all the roles here in the UK because of Brexit, because of all of the European migrants who would come over because of the single market. They're now not there anymore. So we don't have meat packers, we don't have fruit pickers, and we don't have people driving lorries because all those people are now back in Poland or whatever.
mindset of illegal immigration wouldn't be a problem if we just made them all legal is completely accurate. It works every single time that it's tried with progressives because this is truly what they believe. It's insane. Instead of having a realistic economic-based policy for immigration, like many other countries do, including Japan, where you can bring in the labor force that you need while you're trying to incentivize your domestic population to increase, they prefer instead to have mass migration, destroy social cohesion, and on top of destroying social cohesion, they also displace the most vulnerable amongst us, which are Black workers and people in the lower socioeconomic scale. It's absurd on its face. It's a practice that needs to be stopped for some type of sound immigration policy where we can bring people in to do work if we need people in to do work. We can give them citizenship should we need to. But the most important thing that we need to do is incentivize the domestic birth rate so that we do not have to rely 100% on immigrants coming in to replace the population when soon their population will be so low they can't do that themselves.
Okay. So for my closing, listen, I'm very pro-immigration. I don't think we didn't even get to talk about any of the cultural or demographic stuff, but it is what it is. Just like as a quick thing, like when it comes to legal immigration, it's already very restricted. There's a chart here that shows you legal pathways to come to the United States, and it says like one is like, do you have family? If not, do you have a job offer? If not, do you have $500,000 or $1 million to invest? If not, dead end, you're not eligible. So I don't know. It seems like there's already a lot of controls in the system. In the year 1900, the immigration rate was at 13.8%, and now it's at 18%. So overall,
I know,
in the
right?
last, oh sorry, it's not even.
No, that was Nigel Farage. That was like Charles Murray level shit. That was like bell curve nonsense.
At 18%. It's at just a little bit above 13.5% now, and it's projected to be up to 18% by 2060. So we're back in the same place that we were in the year 1900. And then furthermore, immigrants participate in the labor force more than the average native-born citizen. At least here in Canada, it's 71% to 65%. And most of the ones that are being let in now are all very highly educated. And then when it comes to illegal immigration, we spent a lot of time on that. Illegal immigration is a weird one. I think that most people are leaving their country and uprooting their lives because they have a out of desperation. You can call it not desperation, you can call it financial, whatever. But I think that like in order to actually, it's not like the same as quitting your job in one city to get another job in that same city, or even in another city. It's like much more severe than that. And then when it comes to what happens when they arrive, I think that they should be made into natural. They should have a pathway to naturalization at least. Whether that's like, hey, listen, you have to show that you didn't commit any crime, or even I'll even go a step further. You have to do community service, let's say, or go help at soup kitchens for X amount of hours, or some sort of public service like that. Work at a library or something. And definitely, because like in my opinion, having a proper census is very important, and being able to know exactly who's in your country and what kind of makeup it has is very important. Otherwise, there's going to be just a lot of tension, I guess, between these groups of people.
That's the trifecta.
Okay, you want to do Q&A, Stardust?
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull up the. Should come up through top chat, right? If anybody has questions, chat. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them. I'll keep the chat open. I do have a question. What do you do with legitimate refugees that are in country with indeterminate status?
Is that for me or for? I think that's for him.
What was the question?
Sorry. What would you do with
Please.
legitimate
Happens.
refugees that are in country with indeterminate status?
If they're legitimate refugees, I think that it's appropriate to, if they're from foreign nations that are across the sea, that we have a designated point to hold them in while they're being processed. If they're from south of the border, I think they should be placed on the southern side at the expense of their origin nation, not to the expense of the United States. However, we do have a heart here. We are welcoming of refugees, but they have to be processed correctly so we know who's coming in, who's coming out.
Make Mexico pay for it worked out really well last time, didn't it?
Okay. Heem, did you want to respond to that, or you don't really?
I think I don't know. I think the question was for him mostly.
Okay. All right. Crucible Clips asks, what's the ideal number of immigrants per year, percentage of total population?
It should not exceed anywhere close to 0.5%. It should only be 0.5% that is allowed in. That way we can build the infrastructure in order to integrate immigrants into the culture as it stands right now. It should never be more than that, ever. Optimally, it would be somewhere around, I don't know, maybe 50,000 to 75,000 per year. There's no reason to have mass migration into a nation without having programs that are in place in order to culturally assimilate immigrants into the current nation. And you cannot do that when you bring in 1 million people per year.
I just want to give you a chance to
Yeah,
respond
yeah.
also. Yeah.
12.
12. Okay. All right. So one question that I saw, somebody who's an environmentalist asked why they should care about population degrowth because it's good for the environment.
Well, listen, by the way, the other thing is we didn't even get to touch on this. Because of climate change, you're going to be getting a whole lot more refugees. So the best way to deal with that is, well, I mean, maybe not America, but Europe and so on and so forth.
First-year immigrants create more of a carbon footprint, just
No,
so you know.
Wait, I'm just saying, like, some places in the world will be uninhabitable, and therefore those people are going to be on the move. They're not going to just stay there and die.
We've
And
been hearing this fucking bullshit for 50 fucking years, dude. They're not. There's no fucking ice age coming. Nobody's been ice aged out of their fucking countries. Nobody's getting burned out of their countries, man.
I mean,
It's
listen,
not
if you
fucking
look, if there it is though. Like if you look, for
It is
example,
not.
I know because I'm a big fucking fan of Banff, Canada. In Banff, they have glaciers, and the glaciers have been getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller year by year, and you can see it from pictures, like in the exact same spot year after year. So I mean, I
But
don't know.
when their country of origin becomes uninhabitable, I guess we can burn that bridge when we get there. But right now, that's not what's fucking happening.
Okay.
They're not coming here.
No, right now they're not. I agree.
They're
No,
not
I agree.
coming
I
here
agree. I
because
agree.
it's too
Yeah,
hot.
I agree right now. I agree right now. I'm just saying it's good to at least start thinking about these kind of things. I think it's
Yeah, sure. And you know what? I actually have a solution for that called nuclear energy. I think it's a great solution.
Based. I agree.
That will absolutely help with the progressive climate change problem. And
Finally, all three of us agree. All three of us agree on nuclear power. That is a singular-based thing that I've heard him say.
great cheaper energy, so conservatives should back it up.
I agree, but though that's still not going to stop massive climate refugees. I don't think. But anyways, we can go on.
Having the whole world on nuclear energy wouldn't solve. Well, I mean,
If you could snap your finger today, then yes, it would.
We got to eat
To be
fucking bugs.
fair,
you
to be
know?
fair, nuclear energy I believe does take a while to kind of bring into.
Well, besides that, Stardust, I would agree with you. Okay, that nuclear energy is amazing. I'm a physics major, but the thing is, like, when none of us are in power right now of the entire world, if we could snap our finger today and make all of the world's power go nuclear, then maybe yeah, you could prevent climate refugees. But at the point when the refugees are already a thing, what is nuclear energy going to do? They're already on the move. That's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
well, first of all, most of France runs right now on nuclear energy.
Based.
Okay,
Dope.
almost the entire country runs on nuclear energy. You can implement nuclear energy inside the continental United States. There is no 5 years before the fucking climate becomes uncheating. That's all bullshit. And anybody who says it is fucking lying to you.
No,
We've
not
been hearing
5
this
years.
rhetoric. We have been hearing this fucking rhetoric since I was a little kid. Okay, it has not come to fruition. It's nonsensical on its face. I'm willing to endorse nuclear energy though because it creates cheap energy. If it creates cheap energy and it helps you fucking hippies not have global fucking warming, great. It's just icing on the cake for me, right?
Okay.
We both win.
I agree,
You
yeah.
don't have to worry about the fucking ozone layer, and I get cheap energy. Everybody wins.
I agree about nuclear energy.
So I have another question. If illegal immigrants keep prices low, why are McDonald's automated tellers not lowering prices?
Who's that for?
For I guess both of you. Why
Well, first of
would
all,
the automated
immigrant
tellers not?
labor doesn't keep prices low. That's
The prices aren't going to determine that. The price is determined by the price.
Inflation.
Yeah, the price is determined by how much people are willing to pay for it. If
Well, it's often determined also by inflation. Right now, we're in a massive inflation cycle.
listen, I promise you,
we
if
have more
people
people
stopped buying McDonald's burgers today or their sales decreased, then they would lower the price. I promise.
Well, I mean, the argument, the reason why I'm saying the argument prior is that that immigrants have that effect on wages, right? So why would robots not have that same effect on prices, on wages? Sorry.
Oh, I
shouldn't
guess
say
okay.
wages.
I think to
I'm
rephrase the
confused.
question, I
Sorry.
think it's like if it's not gonna if you have a problem with illegal immigrants affecting wages, then robots are basically that, but even more.
No. Robots don't. We already know
True,
robots
true.
don't affect wages.
The,
They
the franchisees make the money on the food. McDonald's just make money off franchise fees.
don't affect them negatively, at least in McDonald's, right?
They
So,
don't wages or how much the price of the McDonald's is?
wages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry,
Well,
I
and why would they?
misspoke.
Why would they? You always have a continual labor shortage, right? When your entire goal for your society is the mass increase of GDP, you're always going to have nothing but expansion. Robotics is not nearly as advanced as people seem to think it is. And the most that you can do is replace 1 or 2 jobs on an assembly line. And oftentimes what you end up doing is creating additional jobs with modular units.
Disagree, by the way, on that. It'll be I think that you that
Unless there's one roboticist here talking, it's not you.
I mean, I'm a physics PhD doing machine learning. I think I know a little bit about automation.
That's a solenoid, Heem.
I don't know what a solenoid is.
Yeah,
but
but you fucking have a PhD and blah, blah. If you don't know what a basic solenoid is, give me a break.
okay.
Okay, somebody in chat, John Loke says, for BPF, which do you think will be the dominant ideology for the right in the future? Your brand of paleoconservatism or the growing camp of ethno-nats, wignats, accelerationists?
Accelerationists will lose. Accelerationists have to lose because accelerationists will not address the primary problem. The primary problem is a lowering of birth rates. Nobody is genociding white people. We're just not having fucking babies. This is the same problem that happens in the black community. They're not having children. This is a combination of both birth rates and industrialization, along with not having enough financial security for family planning. Ethno-nats, wignats, all these people will lose in the end because their message is fucking stupid and it doesn't actually address the problem they're actually pissed off about. It's insane.
See, he's not an ethno-nationalist. He's a paleocon. not that I like either of them, but
Okay.
Hey, John, good to see you, bro. Shout out to John.
Shout out to John. Always with the good questions. I think somebody in my chat was having issues understanding why population degrowth was an issue. So I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on that.
The one of the major problems that happens is a threshold problem. Population doesn't work like many things do. People don't seem to understand because you think there's so many people in the world that it'll always be this way. What happens if you reach a low enough threshold is you can't recover from it. Think about the Native Americans and
But I don't think he's not actually saying great replacement stuff. He's not saying that the white population is going to go away. He's just saying that they're not going to be able to. They're not reproducing fast enough to be able to deal with the population if deficit, right? Or they're not. There's the birth rate isn't high enough to have a population increase, right? Which has to be meted out by immigration, which is what he's saying is bad for a bunch of other reasons, which that problem should be fixed by increasing birth rates. It's I don't think he's saying like great replacement style stuff. I think he's just like a standard Christian conservative paleocon type deal.
inside the continental United States. They weren't actually genocided to death. It was disease that took out about 90% of them. They were unable to recover their birth rates and still to this day are unable to. They've become such a minority in comparison to what they started with, right? You have these threshold problems where if you decrease too much, you cannot recover from it. So you should take this problem seriously. It's a major issue. Nobody's fucking talking about it. It's an issue ahead of its time, which is why. I understand that these are new ideas that are being implemented in the ethos, but they need to really be discussed because this is a problem we're not going to be able to come back from in just a couple of generations. And instead, everybody's fixated on bullshit that doesn't matter.
Okay. Another question that I have is, so prior to the pandemic, we already had a healthcare worker shortage, and definitely with the pandemic going on, people have been retiring early. We've also lost, we've lost some force of the healthcare workers. And one place that we heavily rely on immigrant workers is in
1/3 of nurses.
Yes, 1/3 of nurses, but also care of older people. So like geriatric care and people who work in hospices and aides. So I guess my question would be, how would we, with people living longer, how would we address that?
You would incentivize immigrant labor to come in under work visas, pay them lots of money like hospitals do right now in order to go into these hospital environments in order to care for the elderly. Now, that's not a long-term problem. You're going to see about 3 times the death rate, as my friend Mr. E often points out, because of the baby boom. The baby boom happened in the 60s. It was the first time that the birth rate actually increased majorly, and then it fell back down. When those people begin to die off, you're going to see about 3 times the death that you would normally see, and you'll see a much greater stabilization in the healthcare field when it comes to taking care of the elderly, right? And that time is coming soon, within the next 10 years or so. When you start to see the major boomer die off, you're going to see the scales tip because you're going to have 3 times the amount of people that normally die dying.
Okay. Somebody says that assumes that they die all at the same time.
I'm not assuming that. I'm assuming that
Okay.
this will happen over a 30-year span. Okay, but you should still probably see at least 2 to 3 times the death rate as an average, and that should start within the next 10 years or so.
Okay. Let me look through chat here. I'm surprised I'm not getting questions from your chat.
No, that's okay. They're commentarious. But we're at the 8:50 marker. I'm
Okay.
moderating a debate between Synth and JF. Before I go,
Oh, really?
yeah, on behalf of the Crucible, we would like to thank you for taking time out of your day coming and moderating this debate. You did a fantastic job, right? Everybody
you.
who's in this chat, please, and everybody seeing this video down the road, go like, subscribe to Stardust. She's on Twitch. She's a friend to everybody, right? Even
Sure.
though she does wreck certain people on Twitch from time to time, right? And I would like to thank Dr. Heem as well. Thanks so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it. That was a good debate, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. We didn't even need a moderator. I can go moderator free. But it was great. I'm glad we didn't get to. I don't know. I'm a chill guy.
Yeah,
I'm relatively new to the moderating, so I
she did
appreciate
a great
the
job.
experience.
She did a great
She
job.
did,
Maybe
she did.
she
When we were
right
getting
in
off
comedy
moderator.
skit.
when we were getting off track.
Where's Delinky? Delinky. Well, that's enough of that debate there. They've just finished up there. Again, they didn't really say very much. They didn't really go into like kind of cultural things, which is kind of Andrew's actual shtick here. He doesn't really talk a lot about the actual kind of problems that he has with immigration in general. We just had like a kind of protracted conversation around birth rates, which I thought didn't really kind of put it where I wanted it to go, and didn't really get any kind of substantive arguments against immigration, really. Like, just against the current illegal immigration under the current law then being given citizenship, right? That was the argument that we had, and then we went on to birth rates and a bit on the drug war as well. So it's unfortunate, but I still think that it was interesting to watch at the very least.